All right, so let's transition now into then the three principles that I think you need to stand out from the crowd. I mean, in farming, that's really what we're talking about, right? Is how do we get mind share? So let me put it to you like this. If this little splash here on the page is a transaction, this is a point of sale, it's a closing. All of your competition lives right here. There's a small window of time right before the transaction where all agents are trying to compete to get the attention of a buyer or a seller. And they say things like, how much is my home worth? Find out what your house is worth. Search all MLS properties. Come to my open house. And we say all these things to try to get people's attention so that we can cherry pick the buyers and the sellers who are ready to do something. And we all compete there. And so it gets really noisy, right? And it's very hard to build relationship on that premise, on the premise that I want you to do business with me. That's a very hard call to action if there's no pre-existing relationship, okay? So what we want to do is we want to start getting out in front or upstream from that window in time. We need to build relationship before they're in that window of buying and selling so that we earn the right to speak to them when they're in that window of buying and selling. This is the difference, right? Like old-fashioned farming is all about hitting them. It's all about hitting them right here. Old-fashioned farming is I just listed this, I just sold this. And this is why it doesn't feel good to you, because you really actually like relationship, but what you're doing is you're acting like a taker. You're like, hey, give me stuff, give me stuff. When in reality, what we want to do is really build authentic relationships with people so that when the time comes, we can talk to them over here about, we can really advise and consult them about the best decision for buying and selling, right? So the first principle then at play, with that being said, the first principle here about farming is that this is the long play, right? Like farming takes time. It's embedded in the metaphor. The metaphor of farming is a farm, right? We till the soil, we plant the seed, we water the seed, we nurture the thing, and over time there's a harvest. But so many people in our industry are addicted to the short play. They're like, I don't have cash, I need cash tomorrow. What can I do that'll produce a lead for me right now? And that is not how an entrepreneur thinks. Now, I know that we need cash flow in the short term, so we've got to figure out some ways to do that. But farming, in its very nature, is a long play. So I think this is an important principle for us to get, because if we go into farming with the expectation that this is the long haul, and I'm here to establish relationship and presence and be a fixture in this community, then our interactions in our farming efforts don't have to feel like a taker. Because I know that over time, as my presence and my relationship deepens in this community, that people will just come to trust and respect me. And it takes all the pressure off of that next thing you door knock, or that next thing that you do at an open house, or just takes all the pressure off, because it's about relationship, not about you know, clubbing somebody into buying or selling. And that's a really important principle, is the long play. The second principle then is that everything we do in our farm needs to be authentic and it needs to be helpful. Okay, so when I say that, the result is that authenticity creates connection. When you're a real human being with people and you don't just say things like, I just listed or sold a house, when you actually get embedded in a community and you share things about you, or you are involved in the next community thing, people get to interact with you as a human being. And that's what creates connection, okay? And remember, this entire thing, the whole bottom line of this entire thing is relationship. The second thing then is that it needs to be helpful, right? Like, I just listed this house on a postcard isn't very helpful. It may be fine, like I get the intention, like hey, this could be cool, and isn't that curious that I listed it for this price? And if the homeowner received it, was like, wow, I didn't know things in our neighborhood sold for that. That's really cool. That might have a window of helpfulness, but you can't just keep sending that same message. So the more value that we add, the more helpful we are, the more value we add to our community. And I'm going to give you some examples of that in a minute. A side note, there is a book that I read a year ago called Youtility, Y-O-U-T-I-L-I-T-Y, Youtility. And it's all about like how brands are, big brands, are going outside of their industry to help their target audience. So like Hilton Hotels, or I can't remember if that was one of the examples he used, but there's a hotel chain that would be very active on Twitter, and they're listening to their avatar or their audience, and they're giving advice about where to eat or what else to do in the city, and it has nothing to do with staying at their hotel. They're adding value to people and listening to people and coming alongside of the people that they're listening to and helping them. So, and what's cool is Jay Baer came out with there was a sequel to that book, and it was actually Utility for Real Estate Agents. So you can actually go get that book and see what he has to say about being helpful and valuable to people from a real estate perspective. So that's the second principle that we need to come from in smart farming. The third principle that we need to wrap our head around then is, how do we layer ourselves into our farm for more visibility? And there's really, when I teach smart farming, there's really 6 layers that I teach that you need to leverage. So here they are. The first is open houses. I love open houses as a seller strategy, not a buyer strategy. I hated open houses, by the way, as an agent. So I hated sitting for 3 hours and having nobody come through my open house. Felt like a total waste of time. But what I love, if you could flip that around and take the same 3 hours you spent on a weekend and redistribute those 3 hours over 3 open houses that are each an hour long during the week, during peak traffic times, right? What would happen is homeowners would see your signs every day or 3 times a week driving in and out of their neighborhood. And if you did this forever, I'm going to recommend that if you pick a farm, you got to commit to the long haul. So my recommendation is you do open houses in your farm forever, 3 days a week, for 1 hour during peak traffic times. What happens is, by the way, probably nobody's going to come to your open house for an hour. And that's not the point of the open house, right? The point of the open house is to have visibility. I heard this saying when I first got into the industry. It was buyers buy houses and sellers buy image. And I love that, because when we're talking about this open house strategy, now what we're doing is 3 to 4 times a week, we have these mini billboards out on the street, and homeowners drive in and out of their neighborhood, and they're thinking, this person, Chris Angel, works harder than any other agent in this neighborhood. You see, because there's other houses listed, but those agents aren't doing open houses 3 to 4 times a week forever. And so the story or the image that a seller starts to create about you is that you work harder than other agents. And what I love about that is, how much does an open house cost you? Besides the initial startup cost for the A-board signs, it doesn't cost you anything except for 3 hours. And you would have spent 3 hours on the weekend anyway, except we're just redistributing those 3 hours in a way that gives you more visibility. Okay, so I love open houses. And by the way, I mean, there's a lot of ways we can go into how to create open houses to start to get traffic and actually create more relationship. But for now, let's just say, like, doing open houses this way, 3 or 4 times a week, gives you massive visibility, and it starts to create a story in the mind of the seller or the homeowner. The second layer are things like community projects. So, well, I teach a 6-week food drive schedule, but you could do some other type of community project. This is you getting involved in your community. If you're not willing to sort of get involved in one way or another, then, and really all you want to do is send a postcard, I think you're gonna have a harder time building the relationship. So if you can find someone, look, maybe you're not the one that initiates the project. Maybe there's something already happening in your community. How can you come alongside of it and participate in it so that you're establishing relationship? Okay, so community projects are a great way to start to saturate your relationship in a farm. The third layer would be social media. There are a lot of ways you can handle this, and because you're connected to Christina, I know that you guys have a lot of ideas already on how to use Facebook to build relationship, right? Something like as simple as a Facebook page-like ad that leads then into Facebook ads back to your fan base about things in the community can be a great way to do that. So let's just leave that one at that, but social media is a great way to begin to create relationship digitally with people. The fourth is direct mail. I like direct mail. I know I've sort of been ragging on postcards, but I like direct mail The issue I have with postcards isn't so much the method, it's the message, right? So what's interesting is that as we've gotten more digital, less and less people have gone to direct mail. And so there's this opportunity, if you will, for you to put something valuable in somebody's mailbox. We like, as human beings, I think we like to receive mail if it feels personal. But we don't like to receive mail if it feels like we're just going to throw it in the trash. So your ability to sort of add value to people in their mailbox is a great opportunity that a lot of people aren't taking up. Okay. Number 5, the 5th layer would be business to business. People shop in and around their communities because it's convenient. I used to work at Starbucks fresh out of college as a barista. And it was funny because we'd have our regulars, right? And we knew them, we could see them pull into the parking lot, and I'd start making their drink before they ever walked in the door. And there is this power to local businesses because people shop at them. And if you could come alongside of them and create a mastermind. I mean, I've worked with agents in my coaching business. I've worked with agents in building a group of businesses in the local market and creating a mastermind. And they'll host a mastermind event once a quarter at a restaurant, for example, and they'll have a book of the, a book that they buy for all their vendors and or their network of businesses. I also like the idea of creating a podcast. One of the things I teach is podcasting. If you can create a local podcast where you interview businesses in your community, and not interview them like a commercial, but interview them in a way that would be helpful for the listener. Right. So for example, if you had like a lawn care business that you knew and you wanted to give them some exposure, you could interview them about, look, spring is coming up. What are the best ways to get my lawn, get everybody's lawn green leading up to spring, and interview them about that. And then take that interview and push it to your Facebook page and put the link out there for them to listen to that. And then send them a direct mail postcard that says, hey guys, I know spring's around the corner. I just did this interview with this landscaper that I like, and you can go to this URL and listen to it. So you see, we're starting to double dip, or we're starting to use all of these different layers in conjunction with each other. And that's where your brand strategy really starts to take off, is when you're able to use all these different layers in conjunction with each other. So I love business to business because every business has a database. If you were brand new to a farm and you didn't know anybody, you could go befriend 10 businesses, create opportunities for them like a podcast interview, and get them to be your raving fan. And if each of them had 100 people in their database, that would be 1,000 people you are one touch away from, or one endorsement away from. And all you did was go create opportunity for the 10 businesses that you interviewed and liked. So now, you see, like, this is how you start to get massively saturated in your farm. What took agents decades to create in terms of name recognition or mind share, right? Like, the agents in your marketplace who are like, they've been there for 20 or 30 years and everybody in your community thinks of them in real estate. That took them 20 to 30 years to create that type of name recognition. We're doing the same thing in 6 to 12 months. We're microwaving that mind share by saturating and layering in ourselves into this community, because we're being very intentional about how we build it, you see? So the 5th layer is your business to business network, and it is by far my favorite. Okay, the 6th and last layer is creative marketing. This is kind of like a catch-all for everything else, but the one I like to teach in creative marketing is what I call a tool shed. I have 20-foot tall garage doors, which are just ridiculous. I didn't design it that way, but it's the house we bought. And my garage door lights, the lights in like the gearbox for the motor of the chain of the garage door opener, like they burned out, and I don't have a ladder tall enough to get up there. And I don't know what ladders are, $300. I could just think of a lot of sexier ways to spend $300 and to go buy, a 25-foot ladder. So for, I would say, a year and a half, my light bulbs just stayed burned out because I just didn't care that much. But if there was an agent who stayed in regular contact with me and built relationship with me through cool things, and then said, hey, I have a tool shed of tools, like 30-foot ladders and pressure washers and things. If you ever need them, you can use them for free. I would have been like, heck yeah. Like, I absolutely want to borrow that. Thank you. And then in that goodwill, in that utility, I would have established a relationship with that agent and looked at them as somebody who was adding value to my life. You see, it has nothing to do with real estate necessarily, right? But it does help me as a homeowner. So that's creative marketing. Here's another one that that I like. I haven't seen a ton of agents do this, but I really like this from a visibility standpoint. My car right now is filthy. And every now and then I'll see, like, come summer, these youth groups or different organizations that do car washes to try to raise money. You know what would be cool is if you were able to find a organization in your community. Remember community projects? If you could find some group you believed in and you said, hey, listen, I want to sponsor your group. I will give your group $500 a month. But what I want is for you guys to do a community car wash for the community once a month. And it'll be at the same place, right, the same corner, and whatever. And then you'll have signage. What I want you as an agent to have is this big old sign, banner by the car wash. And you can, you know, it's like, hey, such and such real estate supports this group. Join us for our monthly car wash. It's free. And then people drive through this car wash. And what happens if you do it consistently over time, people come to expect it and look forward to it. They're like, man, hey, this Saturday the car wash is going. Let's make sure we get there. It's cool that they support this local group. And in the process, you're getting visibility. So now you're building goodwill in the community. Now, when they drive into that car wash, you could be handing them stuff, right? Maybe it's your latest flyer or your latest, like, hey, come to my open house for a barbecue this weekend, or check out the food drive we're doing. So you can use the car wash as an exchange point for value. Okay, so look, these are just a couple ideas, and really, I mean, it's hard to scratch the surface here with all the different ways you can do this, but what's important right now is that you see what we're doing is layering in our relationship into the community. This is not linear, this is layered, okay? And these are the 6 layers that I teach in my Smart Farming course. Okay, I got all excited about that middle section there. Let me move now into how do we make this fit your personality. So with the with the 6 layers and sort of these principles we're working from, now let's look at how do we customize this to fit who we are. So the first way for you to have this feel congruent with who you are is